We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm very excited that we have the opportunity to hear from these two amazing thought leaders while they explore what it takes to architect business and technology success across decades of change. You all know Linda, and if you don't know Linda, you're probably in the wrong room. You got the wrong meeting request. And many of you also know Justin Kershaw. Justin is the Chief Customer Officer at Nova Intelligence and brings decades of executive experience leading technology, risk, and transformation initiatives. As the former corporate vice president and CIO at Cargill, Justin helped guide one of the world's largest enterprises through global scale digital and operational change. And today, his work focuses on helping organizations leverage AI to transform their most critical systems. So to kick off, we're going to start with kind of a big question, and that is, why does architecture matter in an organization? And
is that for me?
Actually, we'll start with Justin. Sure.
Is that for me?
Well, you can both answer.
No, I'll give you some thoughts. So I'm definitely not someone who learned architecture academically. So, hats off to Neil and our other speakers. They were both drop the mic type speaking. I definitely learned it on the street. And I would say I think of architecture and why it matters because people matter, right? And, the formal definition of architecture, I think it's a Greek word. You're building a building and people are going to interact with that building, and that building's going to need a purpose, right? And you're building it for a reason, but people are really going to be the ones that go in and out of the building. And it's the same with technology. Okay, there are some technologies that never need to interact with a human, but I really think the importance of architecture is the part where digital meets physical, and the physical part is the human. So.
Very good.
You're here.
You're here.
You're here.
All right.
So why does architecture matter in organizations? Yes, and, which is a technique we should all know. Yes, and let me add more. There's not a no, but it's architecture matters to organizations because it helps us to understand context of what I say all the time, and you've heard it all the time, is everything matters to everything. And I know that's like really overwhelming and kind of a big sort of nonsense thing to say sometimes, but everything you are, we are, organizations are, this moment, this room, this building, this company, is a tapestry of everything that's happened to this moment, right? And every time something new happens, even if it doesn't seem like a happening, the next, someone trips on a step, a thread is pulled in that tapestry and it changes. And architects, we're not keeping a minute by minute on the radar focus on that, but we're assessing that. We're understanding something just happened outside of this company. Something just happened inside of this company. Something just happened to a leader. A mind was changed, a direction shifted. And what architects can do, and certainly if you've been following some of the really brilliant comments from our keynotes and our presenters, is like we try to help interpret, understand, and keep up with the complexity and expose it and illuminate it. I have a friend, Pat Slasky, some of you know, and I've waxed on with him a little bit about how business architects in particular, we illuminate things. We try to shine a light on an organization and some of the dynamics and some of how the box is drawn, like Ranjit was talking this morning, that they might not see. They might not see it themselves. So that's why I keep talking about consulting skills being so important, because we have to be the ones that can shine the light for organizations to see this is where you are. You say that's where you want to go. We got to do some stuff to get you there. And we can help you see that. So it seems maybe esoteric or conceptual to you, because then we know how to do a lot of models and drawings and a lot of stuff to help the illumination happen. But that's really why we exist, in my opinion, and that's why I want to exist in this role. How's that?
That's good. That's good. You reminded me of a story. So I was, thinking very early in
I
my
didn't mean to
career.
do that, but that is
Yeah.
what's going to happen a lot.
Early in my career really influenced me quite a bit. So when I say early in my career, 1983, something like that, a long time ago. One of my first roles out of university was I got to implement the first GPS units ever in the world on surface warfare ships in the U.S. Navy. And so as a 22, 23-year-old, and how I got this job, well, that's another whole story, but I got to take my first plane ride from Philadelphia to San Diego. And I thought I was going to get on an aircraft carrier, which I eventually did. But first I had to go to this hangar. And, I was probably as Nicky New Guy green as anyone walking into that hangar. And when you're dealing with the military people and you're not in the military, but you're bringing the new tech, like they figure that out really fast. And so anyway, I ended up on another airplane and I land on a carrier a couple hours out in the Pacific Ocean. And we install the GPS units. We start running them through their first test units. And it was interesting. None of the old guys on the carrier that had all the stuff on their chest and this whatever they were really super skeptical. But when I would go into the mess and I lived with the officers, a lot of young officers on a carrier, like I couldn't sit down at the table to eat without 20 of them coming over and wanting to just talk everything about the GPS units, right? And and I was there in the 04, which is the command center of a carrier, not, it's up, if you see a carrier that's flat and you have the 04 deck is the flight deck, and then you go all the way up to 09, so that's 5 stories above the flight deck. That's where the commander is, navigator, everything, and we were all jammed in there navigating. And one of the guys on the team I was with turned to the navigator and said, yeah, like this thing's pretty incredible. You're not going to need your maps anymore. Now I'm giving you the story fast and it's accurate, but there's some poetic license in this to make it all work. And the navigator turns to him and says, like, looks at him, seriously. I was very intimidated by this, so I just kept my mouth shut. And he says, he says, we've been using maps to navigate around the ocean for thousands of years. You're not taking my maps away or whatever. And I'm thinking, I look back on this now and I think of the moment we're in, and, that was a moment, right? And you don't realize it then, but we're in another one of those moments with everything going on with AI and agentic. And because, it wasn't too long before there weren't maps on. And I go fishing in the ocean all the time, and, I use my GPS unit or whatever. And I think of the architecture from the beginning to where it is today and how much it's changed. There were only a few people in the world that knew how to operate that unit. And we installed 2 of them, a Rockwell Collins one and a Magnavox one, and we were testing them off against each other so I could operate both. And they both operated differently. And it's another whole story how you figure out how to, operate a GPS unit from 1983 versus today. But we could put any one of you on a boat today or in a car or whatever, and you'll have your life partner with you, and this is your life partner. And it's got GPS on it, and I had to train myself 24 hours a day for probably 6 months to learn how to operate those units. And when GPS shows up on here and we put it in your hands, nobody needs any training. And you think about the architectural changes that went through to make that happen. That to me is why architecture really matters, because architecture was at the heart of being able to take an incredibly complicated GPS unit from long ago to where it is today. And this is why, we're all needed. And this is why your jobs our jobs, and Linda, hats off, why we got to keep this thing going. The architectural role is so critical in every company and so underappreciated.
Thanks. I think that's an excellent. I have a couple of things.
I could tell a few
The
more
reason
stories,
that I know,
like that plane ride.
you will. The reason that I know Justin is because we worked at Cargill together. And I had an opportunity, he was the CIO, I was chief architect, I think, in the role anyway. Whether Cargill will ever have something called a chief architect, I don't know. But, and I got the opportunity, very lucky, got the opportunity to get time with Justin regularly. And I would talk to other people and they say, oh, I'd say, I talked to Justin about this and they go, oh, what else did you guys catch up on? I go, oh, celestial navigation. We pretty much just talked about, stars and all of these fantastic things that he thinks of. And then we'd get into his Navy time and we get into all this other stuff. And it wasn't, we needed to do the work of the day, but it was way more fun to talk about this other stuff. And it reminds me of another thing that I'll say really quickly because Lori's going to go, I have 100 questions. But I worked with a chief architect back when I was at Prudential. So I started my career at Prudential on the business side in finance. And then, so when Neil talked about that he was trained up and he wanted to say he had street architecture training, I actually did because I grew into it when IBM Gold architecture was invented. And then that's where I got into it. And that's where I grew from, finance analyst through to technology to CIO of business group. And that's when I left there. But I had a chief architect there that it was infuriating because they'd be all ranting because someone would be coming with a program or something they want to shape. And they'd say, we have to have this done in 12 months. And we're like, there's not a thing, and this is just a extraction or abstraction of a story, or an idea. But he'd say, well, it's just, and he'd very calmly say, well, it's a good thing we started on it 24 months ago then. And it was always like, okay. So yes, it's a 36-month activity. They want it in 12 months. Well, it's a good thing we started preparing for it before because we're the architects who saw this coming. We're the architects that were building the foundation for this. Whatever it was, no one knew, but we needed to be smart enough to have taken what we could understand from the maps, turn them into GPS, and then turn them into our life partner. And that all happened because of the bricks that we laid down at the time, way, way, way
Sure.
back. So you did that, so we all know where we're going.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So Justin and I were talking a little bit earlier, and you mentioning that you worked for Justin made us think it'd be fun for Justin just to chat a little bit about why he hired you. Why did you hire Linda?
Let's hear this.
What the hell was I thinking?
What the hell was I thinking is what I want to know.
No. Oh, well, yeah. Well, there's a lot of backdrop to that, right? We had been through a lot. I could tell a little bit about the tartan story, which was happening as I
had nothing to do with
that.
that.
As I joined the company. Essentially, I hired Linda for a couple of reasons. I learned really quick in the first couple of conversations, in the interviewing conversation is there's a deep passion for architecture. And one of my objectives at the time, one of the things I was on to changing was we need a bigger appreciation and more competency, capability around architecture in the organization in Cargill. Technology architecture. There's a lot of competency in architecture around other things, food and distribution and operations and all of that Cargill's really good at. We were lacking in the technology organization. And then the other was in the conversations, you're like, well, I worked at the state of Minnesota and I was a CIO in the state of Minnesota. And I was like, immediately, I was like silently, and I tried to not go too fast and slow myself down. You're hired. Because concurrent with my WL Gore role at the makers of Gore-Tex, in the early 2000s, I worked concurrent with the state of Delaware, was hired by the governor when she got elected, and went on to the Technology Council and tried to help the state of Delaware. And so I spent 6 years going down to Dover, a couple times a year to be part of a outside business world consulting, which everybody else quit, and it ended up just me and a guy named Jack Markell, who later became governor, trying to get some things done in the state of Delaware. And I had never worked in a government organization like that. Yes, I worked in the military organizations where did the GPS thing. And it was just ungodly difficult to make progress. And I thought, she had got a couple things done, several things done that she shared. And I was just like, well, if you can get a couple things accomplished there, like with my help here, we'll get a bunch more things accomplished. And it was really that, right? So it was really kind of like, I think most people coming out of government agencies are thinking, yeah, private industry's never going to want to hire me. But actually, if you can get something done in a really politically complicated organization, and everybody wants what they want their own thing, and they don't want to share, and nobody, whatever, you've developed some skills that are critical for an architect, really, to move some things along. And that, lined up with, one of my leadership philosophies, which is, and I have a few, and probably some Cargill people here will laugh because they'll remember hearing them at Cargill, but aggregation of marginal gain. I say that over and over again, like winning through the aggregation of marginal gain, particularly in a complex enterprise, right? Can you break down where you really want to go, and what's the one thing? That's the second part of the philosophy. And it's like, don't take 10 things on. Have that focus. What's the one thing, and what's the next one thing? And can we, through the aggregation of marginal gain, get that next one thing done, and then the next? And when you can string a bunch of those together, then maybe you've accomplished something big. And, I love the consulting world and our SI partners and all that other stuff, but we even heard it a little bit this morning. They start at the big, like, what's the big transformation? And I'm like, well, the transformation happens when you've strung together those, 15 one things. But, focus, like level of competency divided by degree of focus equals a rate of progress. That was the focus formula in Cargill. It's a philosophy I follow. I would write it on the boards. I think Michael Dockman's up here. We were talking about that the other day. He mentioned that to me yesterday. Hey, I still have that, and it made me feel good, right? Level of competency to plus level of engagement divided by degree of focus equals your rate of progress. And if you have, for the math majors in the room, you can't have zero in the denominator, right? So you can't be focused on zero things.
And then I would say,
got to at least have one,
let's
right,
make
or
sure
two.
let's make sure we keep our eye on the outcomes.
Exactly.
So those 15 small things really do get you there.
Yep.
And so we're working to the, think strategically, act tactically with the 15 things, but make sure you're delivering an outcome.
Yeah. And back to the, what Linda was coming through is we had been through the Tartan journey. And, there were still a lot of feelings in the corporation, and there were, like, why did that happen, and all of that stuff. And really, for the small group here, that was in Cargill's DNA. So there's a couple of books written on Cargill, a professor at from the University of Minnesota. They capture the history of Cargill. I mean, in the book, it's like 700 pages, the first one. It's called Trading the World's Grains. And, dumb me, when I first got there and was away from home and living down in St. Louis Park and Excelsior Grand, I would just go to work every day, work, come back, and my wife and I were, at different parts of the world for the first time ever in, our marriage. And so I would just go back, and I'm like, they gave me that book when I came there, and I'm looking at this book, 700 pages, and I ended up getting so bored that well, that's really a lie. Really, she called me up and she said, hey, there's this bar across the street from your hotel, and I'm just seeing all these bills from chili beer, chili beer, chili beer. I mean, you need to spread your diet out or whatever, like start ordering in and like stop going over to that bar. And I sat home and I started reading the book. I read the whole damn book, right? And then I found out I'm the only one on the entire leadership team, I think even the board and the family, that ever read the damn book, right? So, but in that book, right, and it really helped me. I mean, I'm laughing because I mean, I'm a East Coaster. I'm a kid from the city of Philadelphia, and I'm in Minnesota, right? I mean, everybody out here is so nice, and I was not raised nice, right? I mean, everything you hear about Philadelphia and all that other stuff or whatever, I always tell people, yep, it's true, right? It's true. I am that. I threw snowballs at Santa. And, you know, and I sat in the upper deck and, you know, we won't tell those stories, but, I needed to adapt to the culture that was here, but the book was really cool because example after example from post-Civil War, turn of the century, World War I, in the Depression, right? Cargill took one big shot. It failed, but some of it succeeded and pulled back. And then another big shot, right? Way overshot, failed, and then some of it succeeded and then pulled back. And so the ERP, imagine if you were an ERP salesperson and you had read that book, you'd have had the whole ERP industry lined up at Cargill's door, because Cargill had a history in its culture of taking huge shots at big stuff and not all of it working, and having the capability to do that and the wits and the smarts to then pull back but not quit. I mean, it's in the DNA. And so when I had a board and an executive team and we wanted to sue SAP and sue Accenture and like, oh, you know, this has been terrible, right? You know, I just said, wow, we really won't do well in court on those lawsuits. So we're not doing that, but maybe explain to them that, like, it was really us being us and taking that big shot and pulling back. And, you know, Cargill is just an unbelievable place. And we went from a failed, like many companies did, except maybe a little bigger than some of them, and then saw and learned and pulled back and went forward again, and now has, you know, some really effective, large S4 assets and an ECC one, and cranking away, right? I mean, if you follow them in the news, but you know, sometimes you have. And so, what was at the heart of the part that didn't work?
Architecture.
You got it, right?
I know.
Like, and how did
Like I said, I wasn't there then.
How do you figure that out when you're the CIO or the architect or whatever, you know? And I was a believer today, and obviously the pandemic has changed some of that along with our culture, but like, I ain't going to learn anything about where we need to go and how we're going to do sitting in McGinty, you know, and why is that? I got to get out to the facilities and the plants and the people. And, you know, I spent a lot of time out there, and, you know, there were some really big architectural choices that got made that led to that. And that is, like, you know, if you know a lot about operations, a bulk business that also has, you know, a retail business, you know, associated with it. And to the business leader, it's oil. It's oil. It's soy oil, right? And you're like, right, yeah. What's the price today on the exchange of the oil? It's 40 cents a pound. Okay, well, you know, we're going to put some in rail cars and we're going to put some in cases. We should have that all in the same system, in the same operation. No, we probably shouldn't do that architecturally, because when you got to ship 100 rail cars out of the facility and also 5 million cases in a month, you know, we're probably going to have some friction there in how you would operate with an ERP to affect that. And since the upper part of the business was so strong, it overrode. You know, it was override mode on the architects, and it was just, they were just doing what they thought was right. Very good intention. And yeah, when you turn the switch on and try to operate it, it was, well, you know, didn't work, right? So we had to take all that stuff we built out and really simplify it down and separate it out. And so those were again, back to the original question, like, why does architecture matter? It's at the heart of all of our success, and it's at the heart of a lot of the stuff that doesn't go like we intended it to go. I don't want to say failure, right? And I just want to say it just kind of didn't go to our level of expectation.
So kind of on that, playing off of that, the complexities that you were just discussing, with the landscape that we're dealing with right now, the technology landscape, the socioeconomic, the cultural landscape shifting, there's a lot going on in our world right now. And just with kind of even talking about Cargill specifically, the global aspect of it. And we were talking earlier, and I'd love for you to just, both of you even, to expand on how the landscapes, the various landscapes that we're dealing with, the changes, the shifts, how those impact how you think about things in an architectural way, how that has shifted your way of managing architecture, managing your team of architects, and kind of what that looks like.
Just, I mean, how I think about it, and it's even a reason why I left a really, really good job that I had, that I'm, and then joined Cargill just out of, the desire to want to join an organization and do something that I thought might have a bigger impact on the world. I mean, yeah. So I think of it like, so there's three industries. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying here or whatever, but I think there's three industries that really matter to the planet and all of us who inhabit it. One is energy. The other is food and agriculture. The other is healthcare. So when I was leaving Eaton, and I didn't need to leave Eaton or whatever, but when I was, ants in my pants again, I mean, I'm good at someplace about 7, 8, 9 years, and then I need to go, right? So that's kind of how my career went. And the opportunity came up to Cargill. I mean, long story short, Greg Page is on the board of Eaton. Anyway, I ended up at Cargill. With the opportunity potentially, no promises made, to work my way into the top role like I had at Eaton. And, that's how I thought about it. And, well, when you think about it like that, it makes me think about architects and our role and responsibilities, in the world of sustainability, and in how effective and efficient our organizations are, and technology's role in that. And if you just think through history, I mean, mine's 40 plus years. If you go count 1982 when I started, and then 83, you heard the GPS story, like, that's a lot of years. That's a lot of screw ups and a lot of successes. All of the technology advances have really driven us to be more efficient and more effective, right? And now the whole technology landscape has its own issue in terms of sustainability or whatever. I mean, there's going to be more data centers than there are bars, right? With where we're going. I mean, there really is. I mean, we don't even have half the number of data centers that we're headed towards built yet in North America, right? I mean, depending on what you read, right? I follow it closely because I'm on a public board of a company that's in the data center space. So that is, I'm lucky I get to, read on some of that stuff. Plus I followed it, but that's a lot of compute power, and how are we going to apply that compute power? And I think, we're at another great moment of inflection in terms of what, we're going to be able to solve, and how agentic, I mean, that's what we're calling it now, is going to do. And I prefer saying non-human worker than agentic, because this is what's really happening, right? I mean, at Nova, I was asked to check Nova out by some folks who are investing, and Emma was kind enough to agree to, say, hey, will you come and be an advisor? I was an advisor. went in very, very skeptically, having done lots of ERP. I mean, and from implementing it myself on a small team at Gore. Wasn't SAP, but it was JD Edwards. We put it in 50 plants all over the world. We designed a chart of accounts. I mean, literally rolled the AS400 out of the back of the truck and put it in, the office and turned it on and loaded JDE, and then went around the world with 3 other people and put WL Gore on JD Edwards. Learned a lot about ERP then. Eaton more ERP learning plus, other stuff. Then get to Cargill. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. And we were doing the SAP thing. I think we're going to reach a big change is in the midst, right? However, we're still going to need energy, and we're still going to have to extract it and create it in different ways. Humans are going to need to be involved in that. We're still going to need to farm and create food and produce it and package it and send it and eat it and live it, and the same with healthcare, right? And I think this technology and these non-human workers are going to be able to help us do some of those important things a whole lot better. But with each new technology comes the other side of the sword, right? And just another real funny story, maybe. It almost sounds ridiculous, but there was a time in my career where the CEO said, "Hey, Justin, I need you to put a board presentation together and the executive team, and because they're all going to be at the company meeting." We were having it down in Virginia. This was when I was at Gore. This was Bob Gore. And you need to talk about the future of technology and describe to companies have those big worldwide meetings or whatever. So we had one of the big worldwide meetings, like 200 people come in, and and we do our own conference during the day, and everybody drinks their face off at night and then wakes up the next morning, does it again, right? I mean, and we were down in Virginia.
It's not
and,
here, but
and Bob,
normal conference.
Bob's like, "I need you to give an update on technology," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're going to be, Gore didn't have titles, different org, but essentially you're our head IT guy now. You're our, we didn't have the term CIO really then, but you're going to do that. I need you to do that. Okay, I'll do that, right?" And I'm putting the slides together, and these were slides, like a foil and then a pen where you write on the slide, and then you put it on the overhead projector for the corporation. So one of the first slides I wrote was, "I think we're going to need to get on the internet," right? That's what I said. We're going to need to get on the internet in handwriting. And I slid it on there, and again, like GPS, like all the young people look up, like, "Yeah," right? And Bob is like, "That's ridiculous. Like, that's a waste of time." I mean, and then, his other family members, waste of time or whatever. I'm like, think about that, right? I mean, that guy has patents. He's passed away now, rest in peace, Bob, right? Brilliant man, donated huge money to the University of Minnesota, and there's a building named after him, same with the University of Delaware. He got his PhD out here, right? Bob thought the internet was just ridiculous. Now, Bob didn't want email, he didn't want whatever, but I mean, that's your resistor. And I had this controversy, we're going to need internet. And then I, doubling down on my recommendation of the time that we need to get on the internet, I wrote, "We're probably going to end up selling some of our product over the internet." Oh, that was like, you got to be kidding me. This stupid kid, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life, right? And of course, WL Gore's on the internet. You can buy some Gore-Tex off the internet, whatever. And then my third rule of 3, right? And I didn't have anything more than 3 things. I wrote on the other slide, and I slid it across, like, "We need to stop buying software," right? So, very decentralized organization. Everybody in the company was buying their own software, putting their own stuff in their plants. There was no such thing as security, and everybody was doing their own thing. And we were spending money like it was, fish. And then it switched, right? All the old people in the company were like, "Yeah," on to stop buying software. And all the young people are like, "Hang them, get them out of here," right? I mean, so that's,
It's the
I think
consulting
this
skills side of our.
AI is the same, we're in the same moment. It's going to have a world life-changing impact. And I think as architects, don't be afraid of it. Be the one that leads it and brings it into your organization and be responsible with it. Like start with a set of principles, right? And have some, like, don't start with the AI. Okay, yes, bring it in. Yes, be the one who leads it in, but like land on a business problem, land on a set of principles, land on, can you be part of the organization, the IT organization that's the best place to spend $1 and get 2 back faster than anywhere else you can in the company, right? That was an answer I gave to Dave McLennan when I was interviewing I really wasn't interviewing for the CIO role. He said to me, "We're going to make you the CIO of Cargill," right? He says, "You really want that job?" I was like, "Well, I mean, I did come here and you guys did kind of mention in the interview, like, that I might have a shot at it. So yeah, right? I mean, isn't that what we're here for, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, but like, that team has a really bad reputation in the company right now. Like, it's even worse than HR's, right?" That was supposed to be funny, but, yeah,
But
I
it
was
was
a little big
true.
at the HR people, but I took the role, right?
Yeah.
So the rest is history. But I said to him, and he said to me when I said yes, he says, "Well, what are you going to do?" Well, two things I think. One is I've been around a year and a half now, going out to the plants and been all over the world, seen a whole bunch of places, whatever, come back, and I'm pretty sure you don't know what good looks like, right? From a IT organization or a CIO role, or what does good look like? I think we can show you what good looks like. We got good people, right? And they just need a chance to show the organization just how good this technology, because we had really good people at Cargill, right? And the second is, yeah, be the best place to spend $1 and get 2 back faster than anywhere else you can in the company, including acquisitions you make, greenfield plants you invest in. And, I'm very proud to say this, that it was about 5 years into the role, was at a board meeting, and, boards look over the top capital investments that they've made, and Cargill, any capital investment that's over $50 million is reported out, and the progress of it and its return is reported out every board meeting. But there's also a second part to that list. This is like when you're CIO or whatever, if you can find these things out, you want to go find that list. And I was very close with Marcel Schmitz, brilliant CFO, super great guy, and we were thick as thieves together, him and I. We came in together to the company, and I said, "Marcel, I need that list," or whatever. And it's a very secret list. It doesn't just get handed to anybody. But he gave me the list, and he gave me the list a couple of years before, when I was early in the role, and then this is. I would track that list and see where was the one I made, because I wasn't making $50 million bets yet, except for the turnaround of Tartan. And we were doing things in cloud, we were doing, third-party managed services and whatever. Anyway, we, for total return and total percentage of return, there were 5 investments that we were tracking that our team made it onto the list, and the IRR, which is the measure they use, outperformed every single investment on that list, except we were below the $50 million investment line. We were all under 50 million. The biggest one I had was 38. And, but we had the top 5 IRR investments, and I knew that, right? And I was waiting for my performance review with my boss to show him that. However, Richard Anderson, retired CEO of Delta Airlines, was on our board, very influential board member. Him and Steve Hemsley, 2 very, very influential board members at Core. Anderson grabbed me when I was coming out of the room after one of the updates I gave, and he said, "You got, like, these are yours." And I went, "Yeah." Yeah. You go tell DMAG, like, go show him that list and tell him that those are mine. And I just felt like that was, okay, I was the CIO at the time, but really, like I shared with my team, like we're gonna do this. And, you know, when we could, I said, we're not gonna have to make our own scorecard. There's one in the company, and we're gonna get on that damn thing. And we're gonna have some of our investments on there. And you know, I didn't know we would make it to the top of the list, but I said, if we can even get on there and show a return and have it be positive and have it be significantly positive, I said, that'll be great. And they didn't just make that happen. We ended up at the top of the list, right? So again, what I mean is line it up with business value and measure.
So Lori, the yes, and so we can both tell stories about where we said the example of, yeah, we'll get to example of we got to get on the internet. I mean, as we were there when PCs were invented and stuff like that, which is just testament to how long we've been doing this. But as a business architect, as an architect, I literally will, I've used this example lots of times, and especially was Jermaine at Cargill. I think your question was around, at least the part that I wanted to respond to was around how do the disruptors, you know, it is our job to understand what it might be coming for this business. We're the part of architecture that needs to have our eye on that, you know, in the world. And I used an example a lot of times with my team, and I said, you know, bird flu's happening. We're in the turkey business. Thanksgiving's coming. We better invest in pork, right? Because the idea is that there's not going to be turkeys for Thanksgiving. We got to shift this business to produce a different kind of product, right? Or whatever. And so there's a whole bunch of things there, and I don't know if that made sense to you, but if there's something happening out there that is catastrophic or devastating or just creeping in, and of course AI, we all talk about it all the time, is a great example of something that is definitely creeping in. And I'm not even going to say to Justin, don't you build those data centers because it's going to ruin our planet. And we have a whole different conversation to have about that. So I will call on some of my friends on the sustainability side to talk about that offline with you. But I mean, it's a great conversation and so important. But anyway, but that's another thing, right? I mean, what happens when, and I was in the job when we needed to address how we architect our China businesses because of absolute unpredictable and terrible firewall challenges and terrible uptime challenges. And of course, all the data privacy and all of the problems that you know, we encountered working in any country. We had to operate in Russia. Even, you know, we made a decision as a business to operate in Russia, even when Russia went to war with Ukraine, and because we knew that it was an essential transportation path for the rest of the world. We served, you know, like, no, we got to get out of that. You know, can't be on the wrong side of history here. We need to get out of Russia. But the fact is, we couldn't because we needed to get through Russia to service a part of the globe that needed us to deliver food. So keeping track of what was happening to stuff like that, and then how do we construct an architecture that is different or somehow related or contextually relevant to the rest of the architectures? How do we take what we know how to do? It breaks the whole model. And you know, where do we need to be on-prem? Where do we go? We don't do a sweeping decision, go to the cloud. Some stuff doesn't operate that way because you don't have any reliable systems in parts of the world. We were operating in 80 countries and or more. That was the number that we always threw around. I don't know what the current number is, but 80 countries, 80 businesses in 80 countries. And there is not one size fits all. You got to be ready for anything. Yeah. And so you have to be very, very aware of exactly the scenarios that you're working in. And I think that is the job of all architects, but especially the business architect.
You know, it's interesting you're bringing that up, like geopolitical and just culturally and the way business is done around the world. I mean, at Cargill, like in oil and gas or any other really major global corporation, every geopolitical event that happens or whatever culture and business practices there are, and you're affected by it, and you have to adapt to all of it. Another reason why architecture really matters, right? So when I joined Cargill, we had a network, and we had the philosophy was the worldwide global WAN was Verizon and AT&T. And we were trying to stuff AT&T and Verizon networking capability everywhere in the world and consolidate all our contracts into them. And that was the way the team thought about it. And having come from Eaton and, had a little bit of a different philosophy and learned some hard lessons like, yeah, don't try and run Verizon in Central America. Good luck, right? And the same with South America, right? And the same with Southeast Asia, right? And other parts of the world. Like you're just, and I could go into all the reasons, right? Like the Verizon rep's going to sell it to the local rep who's going to sell it to his, whatever, and you're just not going to get the networking capability you need. And one of the big unpublished problems in the corporation, in Cargill, I mean, we had anywhere from 20 to 30 to 30 plus MIs, and MI is a major incident, a month, right? And that would be some facilities around the world going down and being offline. And when I visited the places in other parts of the world, like there were whole procedures written in some of our plants in Central America, South America, and in Asia, which was how to operate the plant when the network's not there. And I was like, how often does that happen? Not all the time, but we got it covered. I'm like, wait a minute.
Not because we architected it right,
Well,
but because we architected it wrong or never at all, and that's
well,
why.
and to our speakers again, right? Complexity is cost and guiding the trade-offs or whatever. As architects, you got to help too, maybe even in the procurement decisions or procurement processes and things of that nature, because like you have to think about that, right? I mean, you have to know how the world operates in the place in the world you're trying to operate.
It's operating, yeah.
Right? And don't think because you're from X, you're going to operate in X's philosophy and whatever when you got to operate in Y. Right? Like X has got to transform into Y, right? Okay, there are some things you might be able to keep or whatever. Anyway.
So the punchline is it's a super hard job because you got to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
And then you got to build a thing that'll work there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Cargill taught us.
No, I mean,
faster than
it's the foundation of all we do. I mean, the end of the network story is we life cycled the network, we changed the contracts, we went to local people connected to the bigger people, and we were able to, in a couple of years, go from 20 to 30 some to zero for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months in a row. And what was the impact of that? The impact of that was unplanned overtime plummeted in all of the plants, just because we had uptime, and it was a profit hit to the organization that had seen in a really, really long time. And not everyone really realized that that's where it was coming from. But my friend Marcel and I, we knew, right? Because we, into his controller network, take a look at, well, what's everybody spending on unplanned overtime? And can we go after that? And how do we go after that? Well, just need the damn computers to be up and running.
Yep.
And
So the
we'll
other
be
punchline
be
is
able to operate.
buddy up and
more of a
understand their
schedule.
partnership with finance.
Yeah.
So I need to, we have a schedule.
Oh,
Yes, we
Well,
are.
Did have
we
a
are
question
taking the
here, but you
overtime.
probably don't want to do
I
that.
think we need to keep moving on. I introduced these two as great thinkers, and they are great speakers as well, because I think I got to like 2 questions.
Great storytellers, anyway.
Great storytellers. So thank you so much. Everybody give Linda and Justin a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you.
We have a lot more stories.
And I still have my list of questions here, and I'm going to bring them tonight to the
That's
social
right.
event, and
That's
we can all
excellent.
learn more and hear more great stories.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we're going
And
to
gonna,
transition.
and anyone that
sorry.
was raising their hand, just make sure we address what you were wanted to ask.
And we are going to move on to our chief architect panel. So hold tight while we get switched over.